The Book of Enoch describes a hidden bloodline walking the earth right now, built specifically to destroy the Antichrist. The people who carry this bloodline have no idea who they are. For centuries, the institutional church told you the end times would be a political struggle, a clash of nations, a war of ideologies. They buried the Book of Enoch to hide something more personal. The real war is genetic, running through the veins of ordinary people who carry a suppressed signal the forces of darkness are trying to find and shut off before it wakes up. By the end of this video, you'll know how to tell if you carry this lineage, why the institutions panicked over this text, and the detail they left out that changes what you thought you knew about the final days. To understand why the system is afraid of you finding out who you are, we have to go back to the event that broke the human bloodline in the first place. The story of humanity's corruption did not begin with an apple in a garden. It began with an invasion on the summit of Mount Hermon. Most believers know Genesis chapter 6 only vaguely, the brief mention of the sons of God coming down to the daughters of men. The institutional church treats it as a strange, metaphorical footnote. The Book of Enoch does not. It describes in detail how 200 angelic beings, the Watchers, committed what amounts to cosmic treason. They didn't just teach humanity forbidden arts like metallurgy, root cutting, and astrology. They altered the human genome, mingling their DNA with human women to produce the Nephilim, a race of hybrid giants that consumed the Earth's resources and pushed humanity to the brink of annihilation. This was not simply a moral failing. This was biological warfare. The Watchers were trying to corrupt the human bloodline so thoroughly that a pure, uncorrupted human being could no longer exist. If the bloodline was entirely polluted, the promised Messiah, the seed of the woman prophesied in Eden to crush the serpent's head, could never be born. The enemy's strategy was to sever the genetic bridge between heaven and earth. So God's response wasn't a localized punishment, it was a total reset. The Great Flood in this reading was not random divine wrath but a quarantine, the only way to remove the Nephilim infection from the earth. This is where the mainstream narrative stops and where the Book of Enoch picks up. God did not preserve Noah simply because he was a good man. Scripture calls him perfect in his generations, a phrase read here as a reference to uncorrupted genetics. The Book of Enoch goes further. Out of the flood, God established something new. In 1 Enoch 10:16, the command is to destroy all evil, then let the plant of righteousness and of rectitude appear, and its produce become a blessing, the plant of righteousness. This phrase, in this reading, is not just poetic imagery. It's a designation for a lineage, the establishment of the elect. God was planting a countermeasure into the soil of humanity itself. The disembodied spirits of the drowned Nephilim were condemned to roam the earth as demons, seeking bodies to inhabit and continuing their war against God's creation. The plant of righteousness was meant to be their opposition, a lineage with a spiritual resonance, a capacity to understand heavenly mysteries and carry the presence of the Most High in a way the fallen world couldn't. Picture a frequency broadcast across the globe, one that only people with a specific receiver built into their DNA can hear. The Watchers tried to destroy every receiver. The flood cleared out the static. What survived, hidden in the human race, was a new receiver that couldn't be destroyed, the plant of righteousness. This ancient genetic war matters to your life right now, and we'll get to how the modern descendants of this bloodline are being hunted in the 21st century. But first, we need to look at the cover-up that kept this lineage in the dark. For the first few centuries after Christ, the early believers understood this. So did the apostles. The Book of Enoch was read, respected, and quoted. Jude quotes Enoch's prophecy of the Lord coming with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment. Church fathers like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus were shaped by its teachings and saw the cosmic war for what it was. They understood themselves as part of the elect, set to face the spiritual remnants of the Watchers. But as the centuries passed, the institutional church changed. It went from a persecuted, spirit-filled movement into a bureaucratic political empire, and an empire can't control a population that believes it holds a divine bloodline. An institution built on hierarchy, priests, and obedience can't tolerate a text telling ordinary people they have direct access to the mysteries of heaven. This ancient knowledge was becoming a threat, so a deliberate operation was launched to bury the Book of Enoch, and with it, the true identity of the plant of righteousness. In the 4th century, a group of powerful, politically connected men gathered behind closed doors to decide what you were allowed to believe, and more importantly, what you were forbidden to know. Around the years 363 to 364 CE, the Council of Laodicea convened to establish a rigid, accepted list of canonical books. This is where the institutional suppression of the Book of Enoch began to take root. By this time, the Church had aligned itself with the Roman Empire and was consolidating power, and the Book of Enoch contained theological perspectives that were becoming dangerous to mainstream Christian authorities. The core doctrinal conflict came from Enoch's portrayal of angels. The Church wanted to teach that the origin of evil was a human failure, that sin was humanity's own fault, manageable through the Church's rituals and sacraments. The Book of Watchers, instead, put the origin of large-scale evil on angelic beings, implying a dualistic view of cosmic forces at work in human affairs. That was a real threat. If evil was a genetic and angelic infection introduced by the Watchers, the Church's behavior-focused theology couldn't address it. Orthodox leaders grew suspicious of the dualism. It sounded too mystical, too hard to control from a pulpit. Enoch's cosmology, mapping out heavenly realms, the storehouses of the wind, the prisons of the fallen stars, and the hierarchies of angels, aligned closely with mystical traditions the orthodox framework struggled to contain. Theologians like Augustine, Hilary, and Jerome pushed the book into disfavor, calling it too old, too strange, too controversial. By the time of the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s, figures like Martin Luther reaffirmed the exclusion, arguing for a strict return to the Hebrew Bible and locking Enoch out of the Western Protestant canon for good. But this wasn't just a theological debate over angelology. It was a targeted assassination of an identity. The most dangerous part of 1st and Enoch wasn't its history of the Nephilim. It was its eschatology, its vision of the elect's future. In the later sections, the similitudes or book of parables, the text lays out a transcendent future for the righteous. They will be vindicated and raised to an immortal life like the angels. 1 Enoch 62:11 goes further, tying the divine sonship of the righteous directly to knowledge of heavenly mysteries. Read that again. The mark of the elect, the proof of this bloodline, is not blind obedience to an institution. It's the capacity to understand hidden heavenly mysteries. The text ties this lineage to a future where the righteous share in divine sonship alongside the angels. If you are a 4th century bishop trying to control an empire of peasants, this text is your nightmare. If the people realize they are the plant of righteousness, that they have direct access to heavenly mysteries, and that their destiny is to share the immortal life of angels and judge the fallen watchers, they will never submit to a corrupt earthly authority. They will realize they outrank the institution, so they banished it, labeled it apocryphal, and mocked anyone who studied it. The text nearly vanished, preserved only in the mountains of Ethiopia by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, translated into the ancient Ge'ez language. This cover-up connects to the final confrontation described in Enoch's visions, one that may explain the sense of alienation many people feel in the modern world. While the book was hidden, the bloodline wasn't destroyed. It scattered, multiplied, and moved through generations, carrying the dormant signal of the elect. The institutional church forgot about the plant of righteousness, and the modern world dismissed it as myth. But the enemy never forgot. The dark kingdom, the surviving demonic spirits of the Nephilim, and the imprisoned watchers waiting for release, knows what this bloodline is capable of. They know that as the final days approach, this dormant lineage will start to wake up. Which brings us to where we are now. The Antichrist doesn't care about your church attendance or your politics. He's hunting a specific biological and spiritual anomaly. The modern world isn't just distracted, it's engineered to keep you asleep. The global system, the media, the food supply, constant technological noise, pharmaceutical sedation, and watered-down mainstream theology functions as a coordinated frequency net. Most people look at the corruption of society and see ordinary decline. Those who carry the ancient bloodline, the descendants of the plant of righteousness, see it for what it is, a prison built to suppress an awakening. The Antichrist, the final manifestation of the Nephilim spirit and the ultimate oppressor, fears one thing: the emergence of the elect. According to 1 Enoch, the climax of human history centers on a figure called the Elect One, the Righteous One, or the Son of Man, the pre-existent divine figure Christians identify as Jesus Christ, named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits before the world was created. 1 of Enoch says this Son of Man is given total authority to judge humanity, to separate the righteous from the wicked, and to strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. But here is the detail the institution stripped away from you. The elect one does not return alone, and he does not return to a passive, helpless people. He returns to his elect. The book of Enoch says that in the final days, the plant of righteousness will fully appear. In the 8th week, that of righteousness, a sword is given to the righteous so judgment can be carried out on the oppressors. Enoch's apocalyptic imagery describes the righteous not just being rescued, but vindicated and given a role in dismantling the dark kingdom. This is the ultimate threat to the Antichrist. The enemy is currently building a system of total surveillance and control, not just for power, but to identify and isolate this specific bloodline before they realize who they are. The beast system is a filter designed to crush the human spirit, force compliance, and weed out those who carry the divine resonance of the elect. So how do you know if you are part of this enemy bloodline? How do you know if the ancient DNA of the plant of righteousness is waking up inside of you? Look at the identifying markers Enoch left behind. First, Enoch states that the righteous are the wise, to whom God's mysteries have been revealed, and who believe in their hidden future. The proof of the bloodline is an insatiable, almost painful hunger for the deeper, suppressed truths of God. If you've spent your life sitting in mainstream pews feeling out of place, if you listen to standard, surface-level sermons and feel a deep disconnect because you know they're barely scratching the surface of the cosmic reality, that isn't a flaw in your personality. It's a feature of your lineage. If you find yourself drawn to the forbidden texts, to the history of the Watchers, to the reality of the spiritual war that rages unseen around us, that's the genetic memory of the elect crying out for validation. The descendants of the plant of righteousness cannot be satisfied with milk because they were made for war. They are inherently dualistic in their perception. They don't just see bad people doing bad things, they perceive the demonic architecture operating behind it. The enemy bloodline to the Antichrist is waking up. All across the world, people are breaking out of the matrix of institutional religion. They're dusting off the Book of Enoch. They're realizing that the origins of evil are far more complex and terrifying than they were taught, and that they've been drafted into a war that began on Mount Hermon thousands of years ago. You are not merely an accidental byproduct of modern history. You are the culmination of an ancient survival strategy. God preserved the plant of righteousness through the flood, through the dark ages, through the Laodicean suppression, and through the modern technological wasteland for this exact moment. The Antichrist is panicking because the frequency net is failing. The elect are remembering who they are. The moment you realize your hunger for suppressed knowledge is proof of your divine sonship, the enemy's grip on your life breaks. The war isn't coming in some distant future. It's already here, pulsing through your veins. You thought you were just an outsider seeking the truth, but the truth has been seeking its original host. The centuries-long suppression of the Book of Enoch was never just about hiding an old text. It was identity theft on a cosmic scale. The religious institutions and the spiritual forces manipulating them worked in unison to convince you that you were a helpless spectator waiting for the end of the world. They needed you to forget that you are descended from the plant of righteousness, a lineage designed by the Creator to withstand the final deception and stand against the Nephilim spirits. The Antichrist system relies entirely on the amnesia of the elect. But the moment you reclaim this hidden heritage, you shift from being a victim of the end times to a participant in the final judgment. This connects to something bigger, something the institutional church has misread for generations. The system wants to keep the elect blind, but Enoch left another clue about exactly who will stand victorious in the final days. Most people assume the 144,000 in Revelation are either symbolic or limited to literal earthly tribes. Enoch's suppressed texts put a very different light on that holy remnant. If this awakened something inside of you, you need to understand the full scope of what was hidden. The book of Enoch says the 144,000 were misidentified by the church, and it actually names the real ones. Click the video on your screen right now to uncover the rest of the story and find out exactly who is chosen to face the darkness.